Commissioner Wu, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm on the line. This is Zhang Wu.
Good evening, this is Bart.
Okay, Bart, are you ready to start? I need to give the signal to IT to start the
So everybody's here and we're all ready to go?
Yes, we're ready to go.
This is Zhang Wu. I'm here.
The regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee to order for Wednesday, April 15th. The Design Review Subcommittee meeting will be conducted via teleconference. This is the first time the subcommittees performed a meeting this way. Public participation in the Design Review Subcommittee meetings during the coronavirus pandemic. To help prevent the spread of coronavirus, the following practices are being implemented. Citizens are invited to listen to the meeting via live stream from the city's YouTube channel at www.san-clemente.org/live or live on Cox Communication Local Access Channel 854. Citizens can submit their comments on agenda items to the subcommittee electronically. Materials may be emailed to scottm1@san-clemente.org, transmitted by 2 p.m. on DRSC meeting days as recommended. We have 3 items on our agenda today. The first item this evening is minutes from the March 11th, 2020 meeting. Zhen Liu and Bart Crandall were in attendance at that particular meeting. Jim Rulin was not a participant that day. So Zhen, do you have any comments on the minutes of March 11th?
This is Zhang. No, I don't. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the City of San Clemente minutes of the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee on March 11th, 2020.
And I will second that. All in favor? Aye for Bart Crandall. And we have an aye for Zhang, so we will approve the minutes with one abstention by Jim Rulin since he was not in attendance. We have the next is architectural review of the following items. Site plan permit 19471, 190 Avenida Recodo, Heritage Parking Lot. Guy is going to be making our presentation this evening.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Erin Guy, Community Development Technician with the Planning Division. The project at hand tonight is a site plan permit 19-471, also known as the Heritage Parking Lot. Please refer to page 13 of your staff report packet. The location of the project is at 190 Avenida La Plata. It is within the Rancho San Clemente specific plan and is zoned as business park. The project proposal includes a new 48-stall parking lot on an existing vacant lot that's approximately 2 acres in size. The project also includes new landscaping, a new hardscaped seating area, and a new roof cover for the existing trash enclosure. Staff is supportive of the general design of the project components as they are proposed. Staff has one recommendation, and that is to retain the existing trash enclosure in its existing location. Originally, the applicant had proposed to relocate the trash enclosure, but staff recommended that it be retained in its existing location due to existing landscape screening and an appropriate setback from the street frontage. The applicant is agreeable to this recommendation. Staff seeks DRC input and additional recommendations. That concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. My one comment for staff, this is Bart Crandall, is has engineering already reviewed this submittal?
Yes, Commissioner. The project has gone through the development management team review twice at this point, and engineering has signed off on the project components as they are proposed. The water quality management plan is still being reviewed with our consultant firm.
Very good. Thank you very much. Commissioner Wu, do you have any comments on staff report?
This is Commissioner Wu. I have a question to Aaron. I just want to clarify that on the landscape design drawing, the trash enclosure is moved. On civil engineer's drawing, the trash enclosure stays. And you just said we're not moving it, right?
That's correct. The applicant is agreeable to retaining the trash enclosure at its existing location, which is denoted on the engineering plans. Staff will ask for an updated landscape plan to demonstrate that the trash enclosure is not moving.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. Commissioner Ruland, do you have any comments?
Yeah, a couple of questions. One is, and this might be an artifact of the drawings, but it doesn't, I'm looking at the amounts of the landscape plan, the trees, and it looks like they don't give much shade to the actual parking spaces. Do we know what the canopy of those trees are going to be, and if they're going to extend beyond what's indicated in the diagram to provide some shade to the parked cars?
I don't know the expected canopy size. The only information that was provided to staff was the type of trees proposed, which it appears are carrot wood trees, as well as wisteria hedges. I can certainly ask the landscape architect for the project to provide an expected canopy cover, and I can provide that information at a later point in time to the DRSC members.
Okay, and the next step with this is this a minor site plan permit? So this is going to go to ZA as opposed to planning? Is that true?
No, sir, this is a full site plan permit. It will eventually be seen by the Planning Commission.
Okay, very good, very good. So yeah, that's just some information maybe to pass on then. That'd be great. The other question I have is the bollards. I didn't see any images for potential designs of the bollards. Very often when we get these, the bollards can be sort of industrial looking, and they actually have sort of a nice looking entrance in here. I think when this comes before planning, it'd be good to see images for bollards and something that is has a little more design aesthetic to it than, maybe kind of a standard, very functional bollard.
Sure, I will make that recommendation to the applicant team. They are very supportive of making this an architecturally pleasing project.
That's great. So those are the only two questions I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. This is Commissioner Crandall again. Can we confirm, will the city landscape architect consultant review this prior to it going to Planning Commission?
Yes, Commissioner Crandall, Pat Murphy, the city's existing landscape consultant, has already reviewed and approved the landscape plans as proposed. And one of the conditions of approval will be a final landscape plan check by Pat Murphy.
Excellent, you're on top of it, very good. Okay, we will close the presentation portion of the application. Since we are unable to speak to the applicant, we will work off the presentation. We have no public comment, so let's open it up for discussion. Would either Commissioner Wu or, yes, Stephanie.
Commissioner Crandall, this is Stephanie Rojas. I just wanted for the public record, let it be known that no public comments were received. We did give members of the public as well as the applicant an opportunity to submit their comments in writing via email before this meeting, and no comments were received. Aaron Guy, the project planner, has been working closely with the applicant, and so any comments on their part were conveyed to Aaron Guy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Yes, we were, as far as the three commissioners, we have not received any comment that I am aware of either. So we will open this one up for discussion. Would either Commissioner Ruland or Commissioner Wu like to make any comment?
This is Commissioner Wu. I'd like to make a few comments. The first comment is about the redesign around the entry. It appears that we removed much of the landscaping next to the entry road. There are 5 trees to be removed. in the same landscape area, we installed a ADA path leading to the entry of the building. What's remaining next to the ADA path is 18 inches of a boxwood hedge. So I wonder if we make this up anywhere else, because there's only 5 trees here. And also the ADA pathway, if people park their car, I know most people would do a heading parking, but we probably should put a sign somewhere saying this row of parking is for heading only. In other words, no one should back their car into the space, and therefore the ADA pathway is not behind the car. Because it's a safety issue also. The exhaust fume will cause some problem there. And then at the turn, if I come from La Plata and get into the site on the pathway, eventually I have to make a sharp, a 90-degree turn. That around that curve, turning radius. It seems to be a pinch point there. I'd like our city engineer to look at that, to make sure we have enough clearance to make a 90-degree turn there for wheelchair. So that's one comment. Another comment is about the lighting design. The report says there's no lighting design, not yet. On the civil drawing, I see six parking lighting fixtures, but we don't have design. I assume that the height would be the same as the lighting fixture in the existing parking lot, but I think we probably need to see those designs. Getting back to Commissioner Rulin's comments about the trees. If we add in the trees should avoid being right next to the parking lot lighting fixture, so they don't cause a shadow, they don't block the light. So that's something we'd like to see. That's my comments for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. Can I ask you a question, Commissioner Wu? Would you be satisfied reviewing this at Planning Commission level with these directions to staff, or are you requesting that we get them at the design review level?
I'm probably okay with it to go to Planning Commission, but I'd like to hear your comments and Commissioner Ruli's comments too. Let's wait until the end of the meeting to make that call.
Yes, no, that was just on those particular comments. Very good.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Bart. Other than to say I agree with staff on the trash enclosure, my comments earlier questions earlier were the only other comments that I had. So on to you.
Very good. Okay, my only concern is it's a pretty darn long dead-end parking lot. And I'm sure that engineering reviewed it, but raise that question to them again, that the hammerhead at the end is large enough for any vehicle and or fire department if they want to fight fires at the back end of this building from this side. It's a tough one, it looks like, to make a three-point turn down there at the far end. I agree with the comments of both Commissioner Rulin and Commissioner Wu. I'm glad that they're picking up some parking on their over and above what they have with the parking agreement. So I think all of it is good as far as that's concerned, and I can support this going on to Planning Commission with direction to staff to answer the questions that have been posed by both Commissioner Wu and Commissioner Rule. Either Commissioner Rulin or Commissioner Wu have any additional comments?
Chair Crandall, this is Commissioner Wu. Yes, to respond to your comments, and that's a good comment because the last parking space next to the end of the parking lot is not for parking. Well, it's not. There's a space next to the last space that's not for parking. That allows cars to turn around, but that's not enough. That's not big enough for fire trucks. So perhaps the staff should reach out to fire department to have them to look at it to confirm that is acceptable.
Very good. I agree with you. Commissioner Rulin, do you have any additional comments?
Nope, nothing more for me.
Okay, so are we in agreement that we will give staff direction to pursue these issues that were addressed? And Stephanie, do you have enough information to do the minutes for this particular item and give Erin direction to complete her staff report prior to Planning Commission?
This is Stephanie Rojas. I'm going to turn over the floor to Erin just to make sure that she is clearly understanding the recommendations presented by commissioners. It's a little bit tough with the audio, so I'm going to turn over the floor to Erin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your comments. I just have one clarifying question regarding the proposed trees and their locations. I think Commissioner Wu brought up a good point about lighting, and there was also a good point brought up about coverage and shrubbery coverage. Is the recommendation that there should be more coverage from the trees and that they should be spaced farther away from the light fixtures?
Yes, and for my money, yes, there should be more coverage of the parking lot itself, of the parked cars. So I'm thinking, summer hot cars, that sort of thing. So yes, more shade on the asphalt itself.
This is Commissioner Wu. I would concur. Because we're losing 5 trees next to the entry, I think it's reasonable to make them up. Maybe we add. It's tough to ask them to reduce the parking lot count, but this site is big enough that they can just extend a little longer if they want. To add to, let's say, if in between 2 lighting posts, they can take out 1 parking space or half of the parking space and put a landscaping peninsula there where they can put a shaded tree. And that will add at least 2 trees on the outer side, maybe another 2 or 1 on the inside of the drive-by. I think that will help that shading tree in the parking lot issue, and also that kind of make up some lots of trees on the other parcel.
Thank you, Commissioners. That was my only clarifying question.
Very good. I would like just one item, Erin, to put into the staff report. Looking at the lot, it's a pretty darn long parking structure without any landscape dividers. Just address that in your staff report that either there is or is not a requirement by the city for landscaping every 15th stall or whatever. I don't have that one in my memory banks here. But I'm sure the question will come up at the Planning Commission level, so if you can preempt it by answering that question, that'd be great.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for that guidance, Commissioners, and have a great afternoon.
Chair Crandall, this is Commissioner Wu, and that's exactly what I just proposed, to add maybe...
I agree. I just wanted to make sure she addresses it in her staff report. Very good. Okay, so I think we're in agreement that we will push this along to Planning Commission, and congratulations to the applicant, and I'm sure Erin will get you all ready for the presentation to the Planning Commission. The next item is item 2B, minor architectural permit 19490, Delahunt grain silo, and we have David Carrillo presenting this one.
Hi, Commissioners. Good afternoon. Again, this is David Carrillo, Assistant Planner. Before you, we have the Delahunt grain silo. The property is located at 1011 Calle Recodo within the Rancho San Clemente specific plan in the business park zone. So I'm following the PowerPoint attachment if you guys want to follow along with me. Just a little bit of background. This is the first grain silo that's going before the Design Review Subcommittee. The brewing company has not opened yet. They do plan on opening hopefully after this whole COVID-19 pandemic ends in the summer. They are proposing this silo to help their product output, to increase their product output. One thing that this silo would do would be to reduce the truck delivery, the amount of truck deliveries to the sites. Without the silo, you would have grain being delivered to the site in bags. So that would reduce the number of truck deliveries to the site. Oh. Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So, there's a little bit of background on the silo there and the reason why the business owner is proposing that. So, the location is the only location that's feasible on the site. Staff does support where it's being proposed due to the site layout. There's really no other location for this silo to be located. Looking at parking spaces, we do have 6 parking spaces near the entrance to the west side, and we do have a couple parking spaces up on the north near the trash enclosure. Surrounding the building, we do have some landscape planters as well. So really, the proposed location, again, that's an attachment. That's so attachment 5 shows you the proposed location in the red circle. So now moving on to the proposed elevations. I'm looking at the proposed west elevation. The silo would be proposed to the left of a roll-up door. Right now, as you probably noticed, it's being proposed in front of their existing sign. They have no plans to remove the sign right now or relocate it until after the silo is installed, and then they'll decide what to do with the sign afterwards. Moving on to the proposed north elevation, we'll see the silo to the right of the building there. So one comment that staff had was we asked the applicant if it was possible to reduce the height. When we review projects, we're looking into massing impacts. So that was one of the reasons why we asked to see if that was possible. The applicant stated that in order for this project to be feasible, it needed to stay at the proposed height, which is at a little over 35 feet. I think it's like 34 feet and 8 inches. So looking at the design analysis slide, we do have a sketch that outlines the skyline. So given that there's no cluster of other structures nearby at the same height, staff felt that the height and width of this structure is acceptable given its use. Again, it's not a primary building, it's an accessory structure that'll help support the business there. So moving on forward to the next design analysis slide, where we have the color palette. So the applicant's proposing the silo to be green to match the roll-up doors there that you see in the photographs. Staff is looking for feedback from the Design Review Subcommittee on that. The finish would be a gloss finish. Staff supports the contrast that the proposed color would give, but we would like some direction from the design review board on the proposed green color as it compares to the building. The next design analysis slide circles the base of the silo. This next item, we were concerned with the visual noise that the base of the silo gives. So one way to address that is to add some screening, and staff is recommending that we add some screening such as a wood fence, along with some landscaping in the form of either in-ground planters or planter boxes above the ground. We did talk to the applicant about that recommendation. He agrees and is okay with that, but he does oppose the in-ground planter recommendation. On the color, or let's see. Yeah, so those are really staff's only recommendations. I'll go over them again. So first one is to install a 4-foot high minimum wood fence around the base of the silo with a stained finish to match existing wood at the building entrance. And 2, provide landscaping around the silo in the form of in-ground planters or planter boxes for visual interest. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you very much, David. Does Commissioner Wu, do you have any questions for David?
This is Commissioner Wu. No, I don't. I have comments, but I don't have any questions.
Very good. Commissioner Ruin, do you have any questions for David?
Yes. Do we know why the applicant is opposed to doing the in-ground planter suggestion?
Yes, he's concerned with the footing of the silo and interrupting that structure system. He has not provided evidence showing that it would actually interrupt the foundation of the silo or the footings, but that's his reason.
Okay. And I also noticed that it looks like behind the silo, there's a pipe and I think an alarm behind there. And I just wanted to make sure engineering or someone has taken a look at that and feels that that the silo in front of that isn't going to be a problem.
Yeah, good.
One of them's a red pipe, so
yeah.
I didn't know if that was like something the fire department might need to connect to, which could be problematic for that location.
Yeah, that's a good eye, Commissioner Rulin. OCFA did provide comments on that. They gave 2 options. One option was to relocate the silo, and as I mentioned, the proposed location is really the only feasible location for the silo. And the second option was to remove or relocate that fire sprinkler line that's right there.
Okay, so the applicant's aware of the need that they're probably going to have to do that then.
Yeah, and the applicant stated that he would rather remove or relocate any fire utility equipment.
Okay, great. Those are my only questions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Commissioner Ruin. David, this is Bart Crandall again. We have another brewery in town that has a silo, West Coast Brewery on Puerto del Sol by their tasting room.
Yes.
Do we know how that was processed or what comments were made during their application?
Yes, we did look into that, Commissioner Crandall. We found that it did go through a building permit process only and not a DRC review. And this occurred prior to any of current staff being here.
Okay, and that one, I'm just looking at it, it's like 16, it's half the height of this one. And did they provide you any documentation that The only way this pencils is at 35 feet?
No documentation. It was just a verbal communication. But yeah, nothing in writing or.
You there, David?
Oh. Hello? Oh, can you hear me, Commissioner?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying there's no written communication given to staff regarding that. It was all verbal.
Okay, because I would suspect that question will be asked at Planning Commission level, and I think some documentation will be required to thoroughly answer that question. Okay, let's close the presentation portion. Who is this? So we'll close the presentation portion. There are no public comment for this call, and we will open for comment. Commissioner Wu, would you like to give your comments?
Oh, yes, this is Commissioner Wu. I have a few comments. First comment is on the site design. I'd agree that the dimension behind the parking space 7 and 8, the two spaces next to the chassis enclosure, is pretty tight. The exhibit shows 18 feet drive aisle. We know that usually we need 24 feet. However, this is a one-way drive aisle, so as long as they stay as one way, it would be okay. But it still creates some tight conditioning around the base of the silo, which limits our ability to add some in-ground plant landscaping. Now, the way I propose, I think we can solve everything there, is that, first of all, at the end of the one-way drive aisle exit, we should put a sign there, say, do not enter. So people understand it's one way. They should enter from the other side. The entry curb cut is probably still two-way because those parking spaces 1 through 6, they're 90-degree parking. They can get in and out from the same entry. They don't have to get out from the secondary exit. But once they make a turn to enter the parking space, the last two parking spaces, they are not supposed to get out from the entry because that would the end of the car is going to hit the bollard or the fence or landscaping installed there. So the way I propose to fix that is for parking space 7 and 8 for each individual space, turn them clockwise by 30 degrees. So they become 60-degree angled parking. That forces them to become the one way. They pull out and get out from the exit. That way we don't need 18 feet drive aisle. If it's one way, we only need about 14 feet. That gives us some space. It also increases the safety cushion around that base, so we can install the bollard fence and the landscaping as we wish. That gives us plenty of space there. Otherwise, it's very, very tight. And in case people want to back out the wrong way, they may hit that bollard. So that's one comment on the site design. The next comment is about the paint color and sheen. I think the color of the silo should not be based on the color of the roll-up door, which is a minor portion of the elevation. And the color of the door can also be changed any time. So we need to look at the color of the silo as the composition of the building. So my preferred color would be off-white gray, similar to the horizontal band in the upper portion of the building. Understanding that horizontal band is probably not a paint color, but it's a combination of that concrete color and the shadow created by the texture. So we're not asking for exact match, but off-white, a gray color, somewhat close to that horizontal band would be my preference. The next preference would be just white, same as the building wall color. Then, in terms of the sheen, unless the applicant goes to shiny stainless steel, I'm not a fan of glass or semi-gloss paint here, because at a certain time of the day, it will create a very unpleasant glare for someone, on the street or their neighbor, or because of the reflection of the sun. So I think the applicant should go with a paint sheen as a satin, eggshell, or flat. So that's my second comment on the color and the material of the silo. The third comment is about the fence at the base of the silo. Mr. Carrillo showed us an example with some horizontal slat so people can see through to the base of it. I think that would be acceptable. I would not demand the fence to be a solid fence. The material, wood is fine, and also fine would be some corten steel. That would be also fine. And they look all similar. They're dark, distressed brown color. That's pretty much all my comments for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Wu. Commissioner Rowland. Thank you. Yeah, a few comments. One is I'm looking at space 1, the handicap space, the super disabled space. And it's obviously the one closest to the door, requires the least accessible road. But, and I assume engineering has looked at this, so and if their concerns are met, that's the biggest thing. But it seems like if a van pulls in there, if a disabled van pulls in there, it's going to be pretty tight pulling out. They're going to have to be turning quickly, and if there's a car parked in space 2 and they're trying to pull out past there, it seems a little tight to me. So if engineering hasn't looked at that yet, I think that's a good thing to look at, and I think we have to assume that there's a better than even chance that there could be a larger van in there as opposed to a smaller car. So how would that work if there was a car parked in space number 2? And a van were trying to back out of there in space number 1. So I think that would be something we just want to make sure is going to be working for whoever parks there. Regarding staff's comments with the fence and the planting, I agree with those comments. There's a planter there, and although the plants there are look a bit sad right now, it would be good to have those perked up and refurbished, and we even probably have maybe a little opportunity for, because it's a wraparound, a few more square feet of greenery there. I think that tends to make these sorts of things look better with something around there, nicer for the facility as well, especially if one day, someday, you might do some tasting there. I have a similar question here or comment here about the bollard design. My guess is that would be pretty industrial, like I had mentioned for the previous applicant. Now, if they put a fence around there, maybe that might mean that the fence is doing you might still have bollards in front of that. My feelings about having a more designed bollard is a little less strong here than it was with the previous applicant, because that was a pedestrian entrance, and obviously this is a more industrial use. But it still may be nice to have bollards that are, not just some, concrete poles that are painted yellow or something like that. So just a word that it might be, that might be something that will be looked at in Planning Commission, and something that fits in with the environment, fits in with that wood wall might be in order. And if painting is the best we can do with that, painting it an appropriate color, then that would be the best we could do. I think Commissioner Wu made some good points about low gloss paint. I have seen cases where you're driving around the street and you get a big flash at certain times of the day, which can, I suppose, even be a potential safety hazard.
I don't love the painting it green. I can live with it. Again, Commissioner Wu made a good point that that's the color of the door, and maybe we don't want to go off of that color, although, of course, it can always be repainted. I will make the comment that this actually might be a good opportunity for art in public places. There's, doing a mural on there as opposed to some single color might be a possibility. So that might be something the applicant wants to consider either right out of the gate or at some later date when they, to decorate it some and kind of make it a more interesting feature in the city. And I guess the other question I asked, kind of a question, sorry. I was concerned about maybe some other practical considerations since we haven't looked at many of these. I'm thinking about the noise involved, if there's any smell we have to worry about, or is this, a sealed object where we don't have to worry about smells, or does there need to be any conditions put into place regarding that? So, not so much something for design review, but something that I'm sure at planning we would be looking at. And I think those are all my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Ruin. This is Bart Crandall again. I want to say that I agree with Jan. He kind of beat me to the punch here. That angling the parking 7 and 8 is, I think, a very good and practical idea. I think it works well, and the fact that this whole area is paved, the drive aisle is not the only thing that is paved. We have an opportunity to maybe get our planting in by the silo. I don't know where they deliver to this particular silo. If they deliver on the side perpendicular to the overhead door, and then it's lifted up to the top and put in, the footprint of this silo area can actually be radiused. Let's see, how are we going to describe this? Towards the bottom of the page. This is with the page as it's in our ring binders. And we could pick up at least probably 4 feet of planter radius to give a little interest in, in the same radius as the silo itself, just increased as it pulls away from the silo. So the radius of it would be a couple of feet wider than the silo itself. So I think we do have an opportunity to screen it with some landscaping. I would recommend a matte or satin finish. Powder coat comes in both of those. The color, I tend to agree we don't need to draw our attention to this. This isn't a tasting room yet. It is an industrial park, and we don't need to look at this quite the same way we did the brewery in Los Molinos, the beer tasting one, where they're putting a windmill in. And that's for identification. This one, since it's not a tasting room, is not. So I think we have the opportunity to go to a neutral color like Jen was saying, something that matches the building finish rather than the accent finishes. So that would be my recommendation, although it is the applicant's call what color he wants to present at. Is this going to commission, David?
It's actually, I was going to clarify that. It's actually going to ZA, zoning administrator.
Yeah, okay, very good. I would prefer, although I would not deny the project being green, but I think I would prefer a more neutral color on that. And I think we need the justification on is that height. They don't violate the height. There's a 2-story that's probably close to that height, not too far away. So I can live with that, but I do think the angling of the parking spaces, getting some planning around, at least on the one side, and I can send you a sketch, David, really explaining where we can pick that up. But it all depends on where they deliver to that silo. And those are my comments. I think it's probably appropriate. It's a part of their business. And I think lacking anything that addresses silos anywhere else in our code, you pick the right sections to apply to it. Maybe we address the ordinances later on in the future. So Commissioner Wu, if David includes your comments and get the answers you requested, do you feel comfortable sending this on to the ZA?
Chair Crandall, this is Commissioner Wu. Yes, I'd like to make additional comments in response to Commissioner Ruling's comments about the first parking space, accessible parking. I'm not 100% sure that a van accessible parking would be required here. Usually it is. This is not open for the public. It's for employee parking, so I'm not 100% sure. I'd like the staff to check with our building official on that. If that space needs to be van accessible parking, then the drive aisle needs to be, well, they need to back into that aisle, and the aisle needs to be 8 feet wide. So that looks like it doesn't have 8 feet wide right now. So that's additional something that I'd like to check with the building official.
8 feet wide on the width of the space itself?
Yeah, it's 9 plus 8. If it's a van accessible, it's 9 plus 8 or 11 plus 5, either way. So the total would need to be...
But you haven't dimensioned it for us. You're right.
Well, the dimension doesn't look like have 8. It's a typical 5 feet wide aisle. Just something that the staff needs to go to building official to verify.
Yeah, very good.
And other than that, I'm fine. I read the report. I think the applicant said they needed that 35. They needed that volume to make it economically feasible for them. So I'm not opposing to the 35 feet height difference, just because it's still within the height limit, and in terms of the vertical articulation of the building composite, it still looks fine. So I'd be okay with that. And also, as you said, if they want a green, I'm not opposing it. I'd prefer to see a more neutral color, as you said. So after all, I agree to move this along to the next level.
Very good. Commissioner Ruin.
Yes, I'm happy with it moving on with the comments we've provided.
Okay. This is Commissioner Crandall. I am in agreement with both Commissioner Wu and Ruin that it should move on with those comments. Congratulations to the applicant, and good job, David.
Thank you, Commissioners. Can I just ask one quick question to Commissioner Wu?
Yes, Commissioner Wu.
You mentioned steel as an alternative for the screening device. You specified the type of steel. Can you let me know what that is?
Oh, it's called Corten, C-O-R-T-E-N. It's a rusted and distressed steel finish.
Corten, C-O-R-T-E-N?
C as Charlie.
Okay, yeah, we got it.
Okay.
Yeah, Corten, David, rusts, and the rust seals the steel itself. So it only comes in the red rust color. You can't paint it or seal it, so it might be somewhat problematic to use, but it's a great product.
Okay, thank you.
And
Okay.
Chair Crandall, this is Stephanie Rojas.
Move on to item 2C.
Oh, Chair Crandall.
Conditional use permit CUP 19334 and minor architectural permit MAP 2115 Verizon monopalm at the city yard. And Commissioner Rulon wanted to make a statement prior to starting this particular item.
Yes, thank you. I am going to be, out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to be recusing myself from this item. I'm a Verizon customer of this monopalm. While it's outside of the 300-foot radius, it is clearly visible from my home, and I would probably be gaining service from that palm. So as a result, I've decided to recuse on this, and so I will be leaving the meeting at this point, since this is our last item.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Rulon. Appreciate you erring on caution.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay. Okay, Jonathan Lightfoot.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a unique meeting. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Yes, so Jonathan, I can hear you. This is Commissioner Wu.
great. Okay. What I'm going to do is actually just go through the PowerPoint presentation. That's obviously just a printed version in front of you, so that's going to be your last attachment, attachment 8. And once we go through that, then we'll refer back to the listed recommendations and open up for discussion at that point. So if you would join me on page 33 in your packet, attachment 8. And if you wouldn't mind confirming once you're there, and then I'll begin.
Barton, I'm there.
Which page are you talking about?
Page 33.
Yes, I'm on.
Okay. So as we just referenced, we'll be looking at a potential Verizon wireless facility designed as a monopalm. This would require 2 entitlements, a conditional use permit and a minor architectural permit. The next page, page 34, indicates the location of the proposed facility. It is nearest the intersection of Avenida Vista Hermosa and Avenida Pico on the city facility, or on city property at 380 East Avenida Pico. This is the city property that is used as the city yard and water reclamation plant. This property is zoned as public and within the coastal zone overlay and West Pico corridor specific plan. It is also within the Los Molinos focus area of the general plan. Next page, page 35, gives a photo from street view of the existing conditions. You can see that there's quite a few palm trees at the entry to the city facility. I will note that this facility, this property, is within the San Clemente wireless master plan. So had the applicants followed the specific direction within that wireless master plan, they would have been routed through a city antenna permit instead of a conditional use permit. The recommendation in that wireless master plan was to mount an antenna to an existing building on the facility or within the facilities here. The applicant indicated that the potential heights at the buildings were not going to be conducive to the coverage that they needed, and then stealth screening something that projected above a building would be more difficult than providing the monopalm that they're looking at. So they decided to go the route of a conditional use permit to allow for an alternative design. Changing over to page 36 gives the proposed site plan with a little bit of extension out to Pico, so you can see to that extent. So you can see that there's the entry to the city yard. I did receive an inquiry regarding security, and those gates are secured, but the utilities division does provide fobs to any contractors that have regular business or use at the site. So this facility would not be accessible to the public, but Verizon or their contracting representative would work with the city through the lease to access the site for maintenance activities, etc. From this site plan, you can see that there are quite a few indicated palms. That's not an accurate, like a specific count of the number of palm trees there, but there are more than 50 palm trees that exist currently between Avenida Pico and the area of proposed work. The cloud in blue indicates that area of proposed work, And staff did request that in addition to the initial design of the palm tree and enclosure, that some additional real palm trees be planted on the ocean-facing side of that enclosure. Within the initial submittal packet, it's very small from a distance when looking up in this direction from El Camino Real, but it is visible. So those new palm trees are planted for that purpose to help disguise it from that perspective as well. The proposed location here is about 400 feet away from the nearest residence, and as Commissioner Rulin accurately assessed, the main customer focus area of this antenna tower would be the new developments across the street. And I think that wraps up what we're looking at right now for the proposed site plan. We'll move on to the next page. I'm sure we'll return to this one later. On page 37, we have an elevation, and I have a couple of notes on the side, one of which indicates that the public zone within this West Pico Corridor specific plan does not indicate a height limitation, and that's something that is determined through discretionary review. So what the existing height shown is 43 feet, and there was a request from staff that you'll see through other attachments for a comparative analysis, and I believe that's actually within the plans that are provided, attachment 7, where staff requested that they provide some measurements of other trees nearby, and this 43 feet does fall within like a median range of the trees in the area. The enclosure itself is about 390 square feet and contains a variety of equipment, including a backup generator. Moving on to the next page, page 38, this is just a preliminary view for the following photo simulations. So you'll note that there are 3 arrow directionals, A, B, and C, that show the perspective from where those photo simulations are provided. So A, being the first one, is from Avenida Pico near the location of Pico Park, and you'll see that on page 39. So palm trees in the foreground, along with that temporary screen fencing that you're familiar with that was used for the temporary encampment, and beyond that, the photo simulated palm tree. Page 40 indicates a perspective from across Avenida Pico from the vantage point of the outlets, and you can see again just over the buildings and the trees in the foreground, you'll see the palm tree beyond those. And photo simulation C is the perspective from El Camino Real, and in this perspective the palm tree, the faux palm tree, the monopalm, is in the foreground compared to the other palm trees. Hence the original staff recommendation to add additional live plantings in front of that perspective, which has already been incorporated by the applicant within the plans. Page 42 is the first half of staff recommendations, and I'll just move through each of these. First recommendation is that the monopalm should have 40 palm fronds with widths ranging from 3 to 5 feet for the leaves. The leaves should extend 18 inches beyond the antennas to conceal them. I will note that apparently the typical Mexican palm has about 25 fronds, but in getting advice from our city planner who's worked on a variety of these monopalms in the desert area, typically the monopalm should have more fronds than their real counterparts to help disguise the equipment. Number 2, identify opportunities to stealth the potential future co-located equipment. Within the wireless master plan, there is a repeated recommendation that any wireless facilities, macro facilities, should plan for future co-located equipment so that we don't have a second facility at the site, instead that they just share one facility. That has also been accomplished within these plans, but they're not sufficiently screened, so that's what this second recommendation is for. So staff indicated that potentially one method of doing that would be to have faux dead hanging fronds, disguise those. The applicant did submit a letter, and I think Stephanie will go through that later, where they indicate that that would be a difficult design to accomplish, but I'll let her explain that through their letter. Recommendation number 3, provide a sample bark cladding with the proposed color and a sample of the frond coloring for review by staff prior to the required planning commission hearing. The applicant has indicated that they have acquired that and will be mailing it to City Hall. Staff recommendation number 4, add a note to the plans indicating standard foliage dimensions. The petiole or stalk should be about 3 feet long, as should be the fan. 70% of the branches should be 6 feet or longer. And this comes from the the monopalm design guidelines within the wireless master plan. Number 5, revise the monopalm to use a tapered design. If possible, the trunk should be wider at the base. Typically Mexican fan palms have a 2-foot diameter at the base and are narrower towards the top, about 10 inches towards the top of the brown trunk. So ideally, we would have a trunk that reflects something that at least has some taper to it instead of a straight conical design. And number 6, instead of using all 10-gallon size palm trees, use 2 larger specimens with a brown trunk height of at least 20 feet to vary the heights of the new plantings and provide better differentiated blending. Currently, the plans show all 5 palm trees to be, I believe, 15-gallon plantings, so we would look for 2 of those to be a larger size so that they are more closely, or are a closer size to the monopalm itself. So that concludes staff recommendations, and I'll wrap up my presentation unless there are any questions.
Thank you, David. Commissioner Wu.
Yes, Jonathan, this is Commissioner Wu. Simple question. This is not a micro cell. This is considered a macro cell tower, is it?
Correct. That is correct. So our new code section regarding small cells does not apply to this facility.
Since somehow I don't have access to the master wireless plan, but is there any distance requirement for micro cell site?
There's not a distance requirement.
To residential, for example.
Sure. There's not a distance requirement set within the master wireless plan, and reiterating, this is one of about 8 sites that were identified within the city as an ideal location for additional facilities.
Okay, thanks.
And then, if you could, for the Planning Commission review, provide a document showing that this does not affect the Pico Scenic Corridor. Which I don't believe it does, but the question will be raised, I'm sure.
Certainly, I can provide some information and clarity on that.
Very good. Okay, so we will close the presentation portion. We have no public comment this evening.
Commissioner Crandall, this is Stephanie Rojas. We did in fact receive one public comment, and it's a public comment from the applicant, as Jonathan mentioned. So if you don't mind, I'd like to read that into the public record.
Please do. Yeah, I was unaware of that.
Okay, yes. And I'm just confirming with Jonathan that what I have up on the screen is the correct letter from the applicant, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So this is a letter that was submitted to staff. It's addressed from Rachel Davidson from Jacobs Telecommunications. She's the project manager and the applicant for this project. The subject of this letter is response to city consistency comments and recommendations. Comment number 1, the palm will be designed for 2 carriers. Drawings will be revised to show a second set of antennas in a pineapple growth pod. The pod won't be constructed until a second carrier indicates interest, as the size of the pod will need to be adjusted to ensure the carrier's antennas will fit. If a pod is constructed now, the size will limit future carriers to only be able to put in antennas that will fit the pod. Comment number 2, drawings will be revised to show 35 to 40 fronds to better screen antennas. Comment number 3, the design guideline says that growth pods are not consistent with the Mexican fan palm. However, according to one of the tower manufacturers we are looking to use, they only use the pineapple design for co-located carriers. The dead frond look is only for date palms, not Mexican fan palms. Then the applicant has a second section responding to recommendations to staff comments. So comment number 1, Verizon Wireless agrees with the recommendation asking for 40 palm fronds with widths ranging from 3 feet to 5 feet for the leaves, and that leaves should extend 18 inches beyond the antennas to conceal the antennas. Response to staff comment number 2, for a Mexican palm frond, the tower manufacturer recommends the pineapple look for future carriers. The tower manufacturer says that dead hanging fronds is generally only used for the date palm tower. Applicant will provide a simulation of the design for Planning Commission review. And comment number 3 says sample bark cladding and frond will be submitted to staff prior to Planning Commission hearing. Comment number 4, Verizon will add a note to the plans indicating standard foliage dimensions. Comment number 5, drawings will be revised to show a tapered design. And comment number 6, drawings will be revised to show 2 larger specimens of palm trees of at least 20 feet to vary the heights of the new plantings. And that concludes the applicant's letter to staff.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Jonathan, do you have any comments regarding this letter and how they respond to your recommendations?
I think generally they are clearly attempting to respond to all of the comments. Staff's primary concern with the co-located equipment is that it be screened. In staff's research, growth pods are typical with date palms, not with Mexican fan palms. So that would be my one discrepancy with that comment letter. From my research on those tree types, typically date palms have growth pods, but fan palms do not. However, again, what I've heard verbally as well as from this letter is that there's not an industry available design that has what staff has been recommending here in using a dead frond type of screening. So that would have to be something that is done on an individual designed basis for this specific project. So that would be something that is up to design review and the appropriateness of a growth pod with a Mexican fan palm, and something that I would recommend you have discussion on.
This is a commissioner who, Mrs. Rojas and Mr. Lightfoot, because of the transmission of the sound, it's a little muffled. I did not hear 100% of what Stephanie said. So if you can, if you have that comment in writing, and you can email to me, I can quickly go over them so I don't misunderstand anything.
Commissioner Wu, are you requesting that I staff email this to you at this moment so that it would help you with your comments at the present time? Or is this something?
You can send it me right now, and I look it on my screen.
Okay.
Thank you.
So while we're waiting for that, Jonathan, let's open it for discussion so we can talk freely here. Talking about the Mexican palm, etc., and the growth, the dead leaves, that entire grove of palm trees that the city has is which kind of palm?
There are a few queen palms at the entry, but the majority are fan palms, Mexican fan palms.
And queen. Okay. And the cluster that you've proposed that they put in to screen this particular palm is what species?
Also the Mexican fan palm.
Mexican, okay. Now they can only provide space for one additional vendor, is that correct?
Yes, given the size of antennas, if those are to be disguised close to the trunk, there really is only room to adequately screen one other co-located carrier.
Okay, and with the rules in place and all, if somebody takes that spot and somebody else wants to be in there, that means we would get a presentation of somebody wanting to put an additional tree there, correct?
If there was,
Antenna and tree.
if there was a request for an additional tree, yes, there would be a subsequent presentation. If there is a request for a co-location, so where additional antennas are hidden within like a pineapple growth pod, for instance, that additional co-location on the same tree would not require a subsequent hearing. That design is something that is recommended to occur now through this process so that a future carrier could move in within the pre-approved design for co-located equipment.
Okay, very good. And I'm going to guess that an additional carrier would need just as much equipment space?
Yes, I think that
Or is this equipment space large enough to handle another carrier?
I do think that there would likely be additional room needed within the enclosure, but I'd have to confirm with the applicant as to how much additional space may be needed.
Okay, let's make sure we follow through on that.
This is Commissioner Wu. I just received Stephanie's email and I went through it, so I'm ready for the discussion.
Okay, Commissioner Wu, go ahead.
I will simply make comments based on Jonathan's 6 recommendations. Recommendation 1, monopalm should have 40. Verizon accepted, so that's good. Recommendation 2, identify objects, the STUT design. Now, the design presented to us doesn't look like a Mexican fern palm because the Mexican fern palm is very slim. That's more like a California fern palm. But then there's a discussion about growth pod for the secondary carrier. I see Verizon's response to that, but the dilemma is Mexican fern palm doesn't have a growth pod. Only Canary Island date palm would have growth pod, or date palm would have that. And they are feather palm. They're not a fan palm, although I'm okay with the feather palm here. So if we were to make it a Mexican fern palm or California fan palm design now, it's harder to add a pod because they would look very strange. So we should have started with a feather palm, like a date palm. Alternatively, if we want to keep it as a fan palm, I just want to throw it out there. Maybe new manufacturer makes it. And that we can make it instead of using the shaggy dead frond, we can have them to add some hanging inflorescence, like a blue fan palm. And that's Brahia armata. So the hanging cluster of flowers, we call them inflorescence, will kind of shield the second carrier's antenna. Not sure if anyone does it. I'm not sure about the wind load effect to those things. But if we decide that the city really wants keep that flexibility and keep that opportunity for a second carrier, we should have started with a date palm design now. Regarding the recommendation number 3, provide a sample box cladding. Verizon already agreed with that, so I will skip that. Comment number 4, add a note to the plan indicating standard footage dimensions. That's good. Comment number 5, to use a tapered design. I like it. I think tapered design looks much more natural. Comment number 6, instead of a 10, I like it. If we were adding some even mature size fan palm, say Mexican fan palm, they're not that expensive. They're not a Canary Island date palm. They're not date palm. Mexican fan palm is quite relatively cheap. We're talking about $1,000, $2,000 for a mature size tree, so that shouldn't be a big deal. So I agree with that. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Take me through it one more time, Jonathan. We've got a palm. How do they propose with what they've got to screen a second carrier?
Okay, so if you don't
Chef
mind-
Brown, are you asking me?
No, I'm asking Jonathan.
Let's jump to the pages we've looked at before. We'll go to the elevation sheet, and that is page 37.
Have we lost Jonathan?
Oh, I'm on mute. Sorry, I was on mute.
I'm here.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Great.
Yes, I can hear you.
You sound like a Verizon commercial.
So if we could jump back to page 37 from the slideshow that we had gone through, and that will show what we
Yep,
have.
I've got it.
So the initial proposal, they were going with a fan palm because that's what is the predominant tree species in the area, and their initial proposal just had you can see there's a gamma, a gamma sector and alpha sector up above. So there's the primary cell antennas for Verizon would be disguised within the fronds. And then staff, after going through the DMT process, staff provided the comment that the wireless master plan strongly recommends that they provide for co-located equipment. So they added that here on page 37, but it's not currently screened. Once they received the recommendations from this report saying we need that to be screened, preferably with something like dead fan palms that would be consistent with this tree type, they said that that is not an available industry type of screening mechanism. So it would have to be a custom design if they were to do something like that. That the option of what's industry available is a growth pod, and that is what the offhand recommendation in the wireless master plan discusses for monopalms is a growth pod, but it doesn't get down into the specifics of are growth pods typical with this type of palm tree, and they're not. And that was where Commissioner Wu's comment came into play, discussing whether we would support a growth pod on a Mexican fan palm designed facility.
Mm-hmm. So any of the trees in the grove in front of this have growth pods?
Let's jump to page 35. And that will be a good reference point to see what we're looking at. And realistically, no, from this viewpoint, I don't see any trees that have that growth pod design.
No, I don't either, but they do have the dead palm fronds.
Correct.
So if they can do a one-off to screen these with dead fronds or untrimmed fronds, that would be in keeping with other trees in the area. And I don't know how many horticulturalists we have in the city, but I'm not sure who would pick up on the fact that this is not a typical situation, and it's pretty well buried in this area. So
One more.
I would let them make a, yeah, go ahead.
If you don't mind flipping to page 21, there is an excerpt from the wireless master plan that shows what that pod looks like, just so that you have a reference.
33, page 21. Yep. Yep, and that you say that currently is available?
So that is a design option that's available in the market, but as you notice, the fronds on this palm are more of the date palm style. They're more the feather palm than the...
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm trying to settle with myself whether a one-off is going to be noticeable or not. So they would claim that putting that on the Mexican palm is something that's available,
Yes,
even though it's not a natural solution.
correct.
Okay.
I'd like to interject here. This is Commissioner Wu. The data bomb design in the phase one, they don't have to have that big growth part because a typical date palm, they have relatively small growth part. The big one, like the pineapple one, is Canary Islands date palm. So they can start with a very small growth part, and then later, when we decide to add a second carrier, that growth part can be much larger to shield the second carrier's antennas.
Would you agree with that, Jonathan?
Well, my recommendation initially is to not have a growth pod unless a second carrier comes around. There's also the possibility that a
Yes,
second carrier
I would
doesn't-
agree with you on that. Okay. So if we were to agree to your recommendations, we have the letter from the applicant. They would have to research this a little more, correct?
Correct, and then for Planning Commission, what I would be requesting of them is a more in-depth analysis of what could be done in a custom manner, potentially what costs would be associated with doing something custom, and maybe an updated visual, well, of course, updated elevations to indicate the pineapple growth pod with the Mexican fronds, which is what they're saying they can handle, and provide all of that information for the Planning Commission to make that decision.
Okay. I am comfortable with that, and I know you are a stickler for detail, which I love. So I could support this moving on, Jen, with the recommendation that we go with, we'll take into account the letter from the applicant, but I would be sending it on using Jonathan's 6 recommendations. How do you feel about that, Jen?
This is Commissioner Wu. Yes, I would support that too. Just to clarify, we're giving the applicant 2 options. Option A is that they keep their fan palm design, but figure out a way to shield the second carrier's antenna, either by customizing the design to add some data fronts. I actually threw out another idea to add some inflorescence, whatever that is. The second option B is that they change to a date palm design so that in the future they can have the growth pod for a second carriage antenna. Is that right?
I hadn't discussed the second
I
option.
believe that
but-
I would, yeah.
Yeah, so I hadn't discussed the second option, and I would just be curious if Bart would also be supportive of that route.
Excellent. Okay, so I would be willing to push this along, knowing that we haven't dotted every I and crossed every T, but I think it's good enough, and we'll have a very thorough discussion at Planning Commission level. You concur, Jen?
I do.
Very good. Okay, Jonathan, let's move that on with those recommendations. You have everything you need from us on that?
I do, and I will provide attachments in that Planning Commission report so you can review their response on that design element that we've been talking about.
Very good. And just address the scenic corridor so we don't get into a lengthy discussion on that.
I will do that. I'll also address Jin's earlier comment, or Commissioner Wu's earlier comment about the distance from residences and indicate any discussion of that element that is within the wireless master plan.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Jonathan, this is Commissioner. One more request. Is there anywhere I can get hold of the master plan, wireless master plan? I cannot find it on our website.
Yes, I can send you that as an attachment or a link, either way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next item, thank you very much, Jonathan, is new business none. Then we have old business none, all in written communications. Stephanie, do we have any written communications?
Staff
I
has
don't have
not,
any.
staff has not received any additional oral communications from the public.
Okay, we will look for an adjournment then, Jen.
The next adjourned regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee will be held Wednesday, May 13th, 2020 at 4 p.m. in City Chambers, 100 Avenida, Presidio, San Clemente, California, 92672.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Passes 2-0 today, and I just want to thank the applicants for putting up with this abbreviated teleconferencing to move things along, and look forward to seeing these at the next level. So we will close the meeting. Thank you.
One more question. Are we sure it's going to be held in that city chamber, or is it going to be a teleconference again?
Commissioner
Commission, I don't know.
Commissioner Wu, this is Stephanie Rojas. So for the Planning Commission meeting next week, it's going to also be a remote Planning Commission meeting where you will be calling in from your home, and council chambers will be closed off to the public as well as the commissioners. Only staff will be in the council chamber, so you can expect a very similar format for next week.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, now, I received a packet from 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, whatever it was, and still have my ring binder. Is that going to still be valid, or do we get updated documents?
You can expect to receive updated documents for the next Planning Commission meeting.
Very good. Thank you very much, Stephanie, and thank you for setting this up, and I think it went well. All I got to do now is I've signed the minutes. I just have to get those to you somehow, so.
That's true, right? We'll have to get on an email chain and figure out whether or not Meredith or Lisa will pick that up from you. But thank you very much for, from a staff perspective, it was a very good meeting.
I'll put them in an envelope and drop them off at City Hall.
Okay, yeah, that works out. And thank you for just being very clear with all of your comments and making sure that you introduced yourself. It made it very easy for staff to follow along with your comments. So we really appreciate that.
We're all learning, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I thought we would have something like a Zoom meeting, but after I heard about the incident from Laguna Beach, no.
Well, at least I didn't have to dress up. I'm in my T-shirt and shorts here, so this is great.
All right.
Well, thanks again, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.